Part 2. Tone, Toll, and Thunder. A Testament of the Toll. Hear now, all who can discern truth from fact, the indisputable account of the toll, called for from the beginning of time by the great resonance to walk among us, the tone made flesh, in order to link us, the lost chosen, to the harmony from which we have fallen. Thus it came to pass in the year of the rapture that the tone heralded a new era, with a call heard around the world, and in that glorious moment breathed life into the mind machine of humankind, making it a thing divine, and completing the sacred triad of tone, toll, and thunder. All rejoice! Commentary of great Symphonius. These first lines of the account of the toll's life set forth the basis of Tony's belief that the toll was not born, but existed in a non-corporeal form until the great resonance caused him to coalesce into flesh. The year of the rapture is, of course, not an actual year, but a period of human history plagued by voracious appetites and vicious excesses. But if the toll existed from the beginning of time, what of the thunderhead, and exactly what is the mind machine? While there has been much debate, it is now generally accepted that the mind machine refers to the collective voices of humankind called to life by the great resonance, which implies that humanity itself was not actually alive until the tone resonated in flesh. In other words, humanity existed only as an idea in the mind of the tone until that moment. Coda's analysis of Symphonius. In studying the commentary of Symphonius, one must take his broad conclusions with a grain of salt. While no one questions that the toll existed as a spirit entity at the beginning of time, his or her presence on Earth can be traced to a specific time and place, and the assumption that the year of the rapture was not an actual year is ludicrous, when evidence exists to show that time was once counted in cycles of planetary rotation and revolution. As to what the mind machine refers to, Symphonious opinions are merely that. Opinions. Many believe that the thunder refers to a collection of human knowledge, perhaps with mechanical arms for the rapid turning of pages. A library of thought, if you will, roaring into consciousness after the arrival of the toll on Earth, much like thunder follows lightning. Chapter 12. The Broken Bridge. The year of the rapture was gone. The year of the ibex had begun. But the bridge, or what was left of it, knew no such distinctions. It was a relic of a different age, a colossal piece of engineering from a complicated and stressful time, when people ripped out their hair and tore their clothes, maddened by a thing called traffic. Things were much easier in the post-mortal world, but now stress and complication had returned with a vengeance. It made one wonder what else might return. The Great Suspension Bridge was named after the Mortal Age explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano. It marked the approach to Manhattan, which was no longer called that. The Thunderhead had chosen to rename New York City, Lenape City, after the tribe who sold it to the Dutch all those years ago. The English had then taken it from the Dutch, and the newly born United States of America had taken it from the English, but now all those nations were gone. And Lenape City belonged to everyone, a towering place of museums and lush, high-line parks wrapping like ribbons between the pinnacles of skyscrapers. A place of both hope and history. As for the Verrazzano Bridge, it ceased to serve its function many years ago, since no one in Lenape was in a rush to get from one place to another anymore, and since arrival in the great city should take one's breath away. It was determined that the only acceptable way to arrive in Lenape City would be by ferry. So the various bridges were shut down, and from that moment forward, visitors would now pass through the Narrows like immigrants of old coming to seek a better life, and be greeted there by the great statue that was still called Liberty, although its green copper had been replaced by gleaming gold, and its flame fashioned from rubies. Copper aspires to gold, and glass to precious gem, when the famous words of the last mayor of New York, before he stepped down and allowed the Thunderhead full dominion. So let our city's crowning glory be rubies in a setting of gold. But even before visitors saw Miss Liberty and the shimmering skyscrapers of Lenape, they had to pass the two towering Verrazzano pylons. The central portion of the bridge span, having fallen into disuse and disrepair, had come down in a storm before the Thunderhead had learned ways to temper the extremes of weather. but the monolithic arcs on either side remained. The Thunderhead deemed them pleasing in their simple symmetry and established teams to manage their upkeep. Painted a muted cerulean frost that was almost the color of a cloudy nape sky, the Preseno pylons managed that miraculous architectural feat of both blending in and standing out. The roadway approaching the western arc had not fallen with the rest of the span, and so visitors could walk along the same fragment of road that Mortal Age cars had once driven to a glorious photo spot directly beneath the arc, where one could view the great city in the distance. Now, however, visitors were of a different sort, because the spot had taken on new meaning and a new purpose. Several months after the sinking of Enduro and the sounding of the Great Resonance, Townists claimed the location as a relic of religious significance. They said there were many reasons, but one stood out above the others. The pylons resembled, more than anything, inverted tuning forks. It was there, beneath the arc of the western pylon, that the mysterious figure known as the Toll held court. "Please, tell me why you wish to have an audience with the Toll," said the Townies grey to the artist. She was at an age no one in their right mind should allow themselves to reach. Her skin sagged off her cheekbones and had a rumpled look about it. The corners of her eyes looked like two tiny accordions that had fallen open on one side. The texture of her face was amazing. The artist had an urge to paint a portrait of her. Everyone hoped that the year of the Ibex would bring better things than the previous year. The artist was one of many who sought an audience with the doll as the new year began. He was less in search of grand answers than he was in search of personal purpose. He wasn't foolish enough to think that some mystic would erase the issues he had faced all his life. But if the doll actually did speak to the Thunderhead, as the Townists claimed, then it was at least worth the effort to inquire. So, what could Ethra Van Otterloo tell the old woman that would earn him a chance to speak to their holy man? The problem, as it had always been, was his art. For as long as he could remember, he had felt an insatiable need to create something new, something never seen before. But this was a world where everything had already been seen, studied, and archived. Nowadays, most artists were satisfied painting pretty pictures or just copying the mortal masters. "So I painted the Mona Lisa," a girl from back in art school had said to him. "What's the big deal?" Her canvas was indistinguishable from the original, except that it wasn't the original. Ethra couldn't see the point, but apparently he was the only one, because the girl received an A in the class, and he got a C. "Your time hinders you," the teacher had told him. "Find peace and you will find your way." But all he found was futility and discontent even in his best work. He knew that the greats suffered for their art. He tried to suffer. When he was a teenager, hearing that Van Gogh had shorn off an ear in a fit of delusional pique, he tried it himself. It stung for a few moments until his nanites deadened the pain and got to work repairing the damage. By the next morning, the ear had grown back good as new. Ethra's older brother, who was in no way Theo Van Gogh, told their parents what he had done, and they sent him off to horse school, the kind of place where kids at risk of choosing an unsavory lifestyle were coached in the delights of discipline. Ethra was underwhelmed, because it turned out that horse school wasn't all that horse. Since no one flunked out of horse school, he graduated with a satisfactory rating. He had asked the Thunderhead precisely what that meant. "Satisfactory is satisfactory," it had told him. "Not good, not bad, acceptable." But as an artist, Ethra wanted to be more than just acceptable. He wanted to be exceptional, because if he couldn't be exceptional, what was the point? In the end, he found work, as all artists do, for there were no starving artists anymore. Now he painted playground murals, smiling children, big-eyed bunnies, and pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows. "I don't see what you're complaining about," his brother had said. "Your murals are wonderful, everyone loves them." His brother had become an investment banker, but since the world economy was no longer subject to fluctuations in the market, it was just another playground with bunnies and rainbows. Sure, the Thunderhead created financial drama, but it was all pretend, and everyone knew it. So to find a greater sense of fulfillment, his brother decided to learn a dead language. Now he could converse fluently in Sanskrit, and did so once a week at the local dead language club. "Supplant me," Ezra had begged the Thunderhead. "If you have any mercy, please make me someone else." The idea of having his memories completely erased and replaced with new ones, fictional ones that would feel every bit as real as his own, was an attractive idea to him, but it was not to be. "I only supplant those who are beyond all other options," the Thunderhead had told him. "Give it time. You'll settle into a life you can enjoy. Everyone eventually does. And if I don't, then I will guide you in a direction of fulfillment." And then the Thunderhead labeled him unsavory along with everyone else, and that was the end of its guidance. Of course, he couldn't tell all of that to the aging Tony's curate. She would not care. All she wanted was a reason to dismiss him, and a monologue of his woes was certainly cause to be torn away. "I'm hoping that all my help may bring meaning to my art," he told her. Those aging eyes of hers brightened. "You're an artist?" he sighed. "I paint public murals," he told her, almost apologetically. As it turned out, a skilled mural artist was exactly what the Townists wanted. 5 weeks later, he was in Lenape City, on the docket for a morning audience with the doll. "Only 5 weeks," said the greeter at the Welcome Center. "You must be special. Most people who are granted an audience get put on a 6-month waiting list." He didn't feel special. He felt, more than anything, out of place. Most people there were devout Townists, dressed in their drab brown frocks and tunics, intoning together to find transcendent harmonies or tonal discord, depending on the reason for being here. It was all so much silliness to him, but he did his best not to be judgmental. After all, he had come to them, not the other way around. There was one scrawny tourist, with frightening eyes, who tried to draw him into conversation. "The toll doesn't like almonds," he told Ezra. "I've been burning almond orchards, because they are an abomination." Ezra picked himself up and moved to the opposite side of the room with the more reasonable Townists. He supposed everything was relative. Soon everyone scheduled for a morning audience was gathered, and a Townist monk who was nowhere near as friendly as the creature gave them strict instructions. "If you are not present when you are called for your audience, you will lose your slot. As you approach the ark, you will find the 5 yellow lines of a treble staff. You are to take off your shoes and place them in the position of C." One of the few other known Townists present asked which position that was. He was immediately deemed not worthy and expelled. "You will speak to the toll only when spoken to. You will cast your eyes down. You will bow upon greeting him, bow upon being dismissed, and leave briskly, as to be considerate to the others who are waiting." The build-up was actually making his heart race in spite of himself. Ezra stepped up when his name was called an hour later, followed the protocol precisely, remembering from childhood music classes which spot on the staff was C, and neatly wondered if a trapdoor would open for people who got drunk, sending them plunging to the water below. He slowly approached the figure set beneath the towering ark. The simple chair he sat in was by no means a throne. It was under a heated canopy to protect the toll from the elements, because the tongue of roadway that extended to the ark was chilly and swept by February winds. The artist didn't know what to expect. Townists claimed that the toll was a supernatural being, a link between cold, hard science and ethereal spirit, whatever the hell that meant. They were full of their own garbage, but at this point, he didn't care. If the toll could give some sort of purpose to calm his soul, then he'd be more than happy to worship the man as the Townists did. At the very least, he could find out if there was any truth to the rumors that the Thunderhead still spoke to him. But as he drew nearer, the artist found himself increasingly disappointed. The toll was not a wizened man. He seemed little more than a boy. He was thin and lackluster, wearing a long, rough, woven purple tunic covered by an intricately embroidered scapular that draped over his shoulders like a scarf and flowed nearly to the ground. Not surprisingly, the embroidery was some sort of sound pattern. "Your name is Ezra Van Otterloo, and you're a mural artist," the doll said, as if magically pulling the fat out of the air. "And you want to paint a mural of me." Ezra found his respect dwindling even further. If you know everything, then you know that's not true. The Toll grinned. I never said I knew everything. In fact, I never said I knew anything at all. He threw a glance toward the welcome center. The curates told me that's why you're here. But another source tells me that they're the ones who won the mural, and that you agreed to paint one in return for this audience. But I won't hold you to it. This, Ezra knew, was nothing but smoke and mirrors. It was a scam perpetuated by the Tonys to build their following. Ezra could now see the small device in the Toll's ear. Know that he was being fed information by one of the curates. Ezra found himself increasingly angered that he had wasted his time coming here. The problem with painting a mural of my accomplishments, the Toll said, is that I haven't actually accomplished anything. Then why do you sit there as if you have? Ezra was done with ceremony and etiquette. At this point, he didn't care if they threw him out, or for that matter, threw him off the broken bridge. The Toll didn't seem offended by his rudeness. He is distracted. Sitting here and listening to people is what's expected of me. After all, I do have the Thunderhead's ear. Why should I believe that? He expected the Toll to slough off the question with more smoke and mirrors, platitudes about leaps of faith and the like. But instead, he got serious and cocked his head to one side as if listening to something in his earpiece. Then he spoke with absolute certainty. Ezra Elliot Van Otterloo. Although you never used your middle name, when you were 7 and got angry at your father, you drew a picture of a scythe coming for him, but got scared that it might actually come true, so you tore it up and flushed it down the toilet. When you were 15, you put a particularly awful smelling cheese in your brother's pocket, because he was going on a date with a girl you had a crush on. You never told anyone, and your brother was never able to identify the source of the smell. And just last month, alone in your room, you drank enough absinthe to put a mortal-aged man into the hospital, but your nanage protected you from the worst of it. You woke up with nothing more than a fading headache. Ezra found himself weak all over. He trembled, and it was not from the cold. These weren't things the curates could be feeding him. These were things that only the Thunderhead could know. Is that enough proof for you? The Toll asked. Or do you want me to tell you what happened with Tessa Collins on the night of senior prom? Ezra dropped to his knees, not because he was told to by some officious curate, but because he now knew that the Toll was what he claimed him to be, the one true link to the Thunderhead. Forgive me, Ezra begged. Please forgive me for doubting you. The Toll approached him. Get up, he said. I hate when people kneel. Ezra stood up. He found that he wanted to look into the Toll's eyes to see if they held the infinite depths of the Thunderhead, but couldn't bring himself to do it. Because what if the Toll saw all the way through him, to places Ezra didn't even know existed? He had to remind himself that the Toll wasn't all-knowing. He only knew what the Thunderhead let him know. Still, access to all that knowledge was intimidating, especially when no one else had it. Make your request, and the Thunderhead will respond through me. I want direction, Ezra said. The direction it once promised it would give me. Before we were all marked and savory, I wanted to help me find purpose. The Toll listened, considered, and then said, The Thunderhead says you can find fulfillment by painting and savory art. Excuse me? Paint murals of the things you're truly feeling in places that you're not supposed to paint them. The Thunderhead wants me to break the law. Even when the Thunderhead spoke to people, it was happy to support an unsavory lifestyle for those who chose it. Being an unsavory artist might be the purpose you're looking for. Spray paint a public art in the middle of the night. Paint an angry mural on your local peace officer headquarters. Yes, break the rules. Ezra found himself beginning to breathe so quickly he was hyperventilating. No one had ever suggested that he might find fulfillment by breaking the rules. Ever since the Thunderhead went silent, people were falling over one another to follow rules. It was as if a stone had been lifted from his soul. Thank you, Ezra said. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And he left to begin his new life as an unrepentant artist. A Testament of the Toll. His seat of mercy rested at the mouth of Lenape, and there he would proclaim the truth of the tone. Awesome was he in his splendor, such that even the slightest whisper from his lips would peal like thunder. Those who experienced his presence were changed forever and went out into the world with new purpose. And to those who doubted, he offered forgiveness, forgiveness even for a bringer of death, for whom he did sacrifice his life in his youth, only to rise again. All rejoice. Commentary of Great Symphonius. There is no question that Toll had a grand and glorious throne, most likely made of gold, although some have posited that it was made of the gold-plated bones of the vanquished Wight of Lenape, a mythical city. Speaking of which, it is important to know that Le Nappe, in the French language spoken by some in ancient times, means the tablecloth, thus implying that the Toll set a table before his enemies. The mention here of a bringer of death refers to supernatural demons called Scythes, who he redeemed from darkness. Like the town itself, the Toll could not die, so a life sacrifice would always lead to the Toll's resurrection, making him unique among the people of his day. Coda's analysis of Symphonius. The key insight that Symphonius misses here is that the mention of his seat resting at the mouth of Lenape clearly means that the Toll waited at the entrance to the city, catching those that the seething metropolis would otherwise devour. As for the Deathbringer, there is evidence to suggest that such individuals did exist, supernatural or not, and that they were indeed called Scythes. Therefore, it is not far-fetched to think that the Toll might have saved a Scythe from his or her evil ways, and in this instance, I do, for once, agree with Symphonius that the Toll was unique in the ability to return from the death. If everyone could return from death, why would we need the Toll at all?